Okay, good morning, everyone. It's exactly 10 o'clock, and we'd like to get started. Welcome to the New York chapter webinar. This is the second one for the year. Today's webinar is on why your company needs public relations and social media and how it works. And it'll be presented by Lila Sidhwa of Lila Public Relations. A little bit about Lila. Lila graduated from Wilfrid Laurier University in Toronto with BA Honors in Communications and Media Studies in 2017. She then attended Humber College to specialize in public relations, advertising, and applied communication. She started working with SO, which is Strategic Objectives Company, and worked on a PR project for Kellogg's Canada and Breakfast Club of Canada. She was also involved with the official launch of Cheez-It in Canada. Then came COVID, and Lila decided to help struggling companies to adjust to the new reality. She enjoyed it so much, and her entrepreneurial juices started flowing, and she decided to start her own company, Lila Public Relations, in May of 2020. The company helps new and existing businesses build their brands using strategic media relations, social media, and web development. She emphasizes the importance of ongoing engagement on relevant platforms to access and establish impactful relationships with target demographics. Her company specializes in media and influencer relations, social media, and blog development, and also event coordination. Lila was born in Oakville, Ontario, where she currently resides with her parents, Phil and Maruk, and brothers Farouk and Danny. In 2018, she took her first trip to India to learn about her Parsi roots and meet relatives in Mumbai, Pune, and Udwada. Besides English, Lila speaks French, Italian, and understands Gujarati. Outside her PR work, Lila works in customer service and screening at Trillium hospitals and its vaccination clinics with patients, visitors, and employees. She also teaches yoga classes, currently virtually, to individuals and to company wellness programs across Toronto. She's a fitness buff and loves keeping her family active, creating at-home workouts and going for runs with her Jack Russell dog, Diego. A lifelong foodie, the pandemic has brought out the baker within and has her whipping up all sorts of treats for her family to enjoy, from sourdough breads and pizza to cinnamon rolls and shortbread cookies. I'm getting hungry, Lila. As if this is not enough, I've appointed Lila as a social media advisor to WZCC directors and the WZCC Youth Wing to help our brand and communicate its projects and accomplishments more effectively. Friends, Lila will now talk and explain to us why your company needs public relations and social media and how it works. Please remember to ask your questions in the chat box, and Natalie Ghandi, co-chair of the New York chapter, will moderate the Q&A session. Over to you, Lila.
Thank you, Edul, for that extensive introduction. Hi, everyone. So welcome. Today, as he mentioned, we will be speaking about PR and social media for your company or your entrepreneurial endeavors, whatever they may be, and just how it all works, learning a little bit about the world of social media and public relations today. So let's get started. I'm going to just move the chat box there. So firstly, just an introduction to what public relations is. So it's the development and maintenance of relationships between a company and its stakeholders. So this basically, it's all about relationship building. It's all about creating meaningful and lasting relationships and maintaining relationships with key stakeholders. We're going to talk on the next slide a bit about how this is different from marketing. But so what we use in public relations is media relations and strategic communications tools. So social media is one of those. And then we do things like press releases. We could be making posters. There's a whole variety of tools and tactics we can use to get messaging across for a company. And we're targeting the right people. So we have to really do a lot of research to figure out who we're targeting, who is our market demographic. And ultimately, we're building a positive brand recognition. So we're keeping up a good reputation and we're keeping a positive recognition of our brand. So here's kind of the difference, if you're wondering, the difference between public relations and marketing. So in public relations, your target is all the stakeholders involved, which might not always be just the consumer of the product or service. It could be government entities. It could be the general public that's not buying your product. So here's kind of various terms that we associate with PR and managing relationships versus the direct sell of the product, which is more in marketing. So our audience is a really key factor here. Our audience in PR is the stakeholders, all of the stakeholders, everybody involved, everybody who may have relation to the brand, as opposed to marketing where the audience is the buyer. Your focus is directly selling a product to somebody. So we can come back to this slide later for more extensive detail. There's a lot on it. Sorry, it keeps skipping ahead. So why should we use public relations? So having strong PR builds strong relationships, as we mentioned, and it's for reputational management. So this sets your company apart from its competing brands and from other brands. So we're constantly monitoring and managing how our messaging is being conceived. So it's not just about sending out messaging, but it's about how is this being perceived by our audience? Who is our audience and how are they reading this? So it's about the overall brand's perception as opposed to just the product's perception, which is more marketing, as we talked about. So this makes your company an industry leader amongst its stakeholders. So people recognize your brand more when it's marketed to them well and when you've built those lasting relationships with people. And it helps you understand how your brand lands amongst its stakeholders. So here's a little example of just a little fun thing I created. So you've got two options to go to a bakery. So bakery A, we don't know how many years it's been open, but we know it's family owned. They don't have a website, but you can view their menu on Yelp, which is like a review site that posts reviews and menu photos and such. There's food blogs. Sorry, they don't have food blogs. It's never been covered by the media, so we don't know much about it or what people have said about it. Their last social media post was in 2018. So we look on their Instagram or Facebook, it doesn't say anything since 2018. And you've never heard it before, but it's got a 4.7 star rating on Yelp. And then Bakery B, we can see right from the get-go on their website that they've been open for 25 years. They're family owned. They have a website with really appealing graphics. You can read their menu. They have a whole history of how they started off as a family-run business. They're rated the #1 bakery in the city in media outlets. So online news outlets are talking about them. Their last social post was only 2 days ago, and it was of their cannoli, one of the most popular menu items. And people on social media have visited it. So people that you know have been there and they've talked about it. They've posted it saying how great of an experience they had, but they have an only 4.5 star rating. So which bakery you choose, most likely, even though they have a lower star rating, would be Bakery B, just because it's more familiar to you. And now I'm going to talk a little about how that familiarity kind of plays a role in our decision making. So a study was done that basically talks about how our brains reveal our choices. So you're more likely to gravitate towards something you're familiar with, something you know, something maybe somebody you know knows versus something you've never heard of before. So in a study done, people were shown flashes of different objects and colors, and they were all different, but one of those objects was shown to them 3 random times, and the rest were shown just once. And so then they were asked to select which object or color they prefer. And nearly every time, participants were guaranteed to choose the one that they saw 3 times, just because of that familiarity and recognition. And then another factor here with going off that is reputability. So have I heard of them before? Has somebody mentioned them before? That counts as one of those times that those participants viewed an object. And then competing with well-known brands is a challenge because of this, because well-known brands are familiar to us. We've all heard of Kellogg. We've all heard of these big, huge companies. So this is where we find a little bit of a challenge. So this is kind of what we need to focus on to beat that challenge and kind of overcome it. So we need to identify where our target audience is and use that platform. So we need to find them and go there. We need to ensure our brand is reaching that audience regularly. So on social media, we kind of have a rule of thumb that we're posting roughly 3 times a week. This obviously may differ according to your brand and how it's being portrayed to your audience and how you want it to land. And then post content that target audience needs, not necessarily what we want them to need. And this is a really important one that a lot of us kind of forget, I think, when we are promoting our own branding, is this is not about us, it's about them, and finding them and doing our market research to find where they are. And so the next point there, conduct market research. So we discover the categories, or what is their sex, gender, age, interests. So you can narrow down on certain software, like what are video gamers more likely to use as a social media tool? Very specific filters using software that we can talk about later as well. And the platforms they're using to absorb information. So where are they? What are they interested in, and where do they go to learn things about the world, and where do they go to connect? And that's where we need to be. So this could be online news outlets, magazines, websites, blogs. It could be in podcasts, and of course, social media, which is where so much of our younger demographic is, if not all of it. So developing a plan, this is kind of where I like to start when I start working with somebody. We always develop a really rough kind of plan of, okay, this is what we're going to be doing. And you can do this for yourself too when you're kind of trying to market yourself. So purpose. So first, identify and understand why you're doing this. Why am I developing this plan? What is it going to achieve in a very general sense? And then I like to create a SWOT analysis only in terms of publicity. You could create a SWOT analysis on an entire company and all of their weaknesses. But this is in terms of publicity. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Do they have a social media page? Are they lacking something there? Could we broaden something? So what are the opportunities? And of course, the threats. What are the possible ways, this could be like a competing brand taking over. And the one we really focus on here is opportunities, because that's where the plan gets set in place and we decide to do whatever we've set off to do. So then we identify our objectives. These are measurable, they're numeric, they're very specific, and they have a timeline. So your objectives are, well, you'll see examples soon, but your objectives are roughly like a percentage of growth in a set amount of time, and we're hoping to achieve that. And it's really important to have these, because if you don't have these set objectives or goals, you don't know how long it could take you to do something, if at all. So really important to set those objectives, and then identifying the target audience. So again, really nailing down where they are, who they are. There's software that help us do this. And there are resources out there to find out exactly where our target audience is. So using that. Key messaging. So what we're going to kind of come back to every time is the key messages. What am I trying to convey? What is my overall message to this specific audience? And this is broken down by audiences. What are my strategies? So these are on specific platforms. So you're going to be very specific in your strategies, and there are going to be different ones for each platform to reach your audience. And in your tactics, how you're going to execute those strategies and which platforms you're going to use, et cetera. So exactly where you're going to be and what you're going to be talking about. And then at the end, I like to measure success always. So you refer back to your objectives and you say, okay, did it work? Did we accomplish our objectives? Did we do what we set off to do? And you can obviously apply this to anything in life, but it's really important to know whether what you're doing is working. So we can be specific and use numerics again to say this is what we did grow by. So just some examples. So purpose, an example of a purpose is the purpose of this plan is to increase public awareness of whatever company in order to become an industry leader amongst its competitors. So it's very general and broad. It doesn't have to be specific. It's just, what do you want to get out of this? This is an example of a SWOT analysis for a transportation company. So this is outlining all of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats with regard to public relations for a company. So we can go through this, but if you look over, I'm going to just move this over. If you look over at strengths, we've got credibility, having a large scale customer base, a social media presence counts as a strength, even if it's not necessarily strong or can be improved. And then weaknesses, obviously, we can talk about visibility. We can talk about where they could leverage or haven't leveraged social media platforms, as well as media relations. Opportunities are really a big focus, because that's what we're going to do and how we're hoping to do it. So that's, using graphically appealing content for social media. Very specific, as you can see, aligning Facebook with the other social accounts. And then moving to threats, potential ways that things could go wrong that we need to be aware of and be able to address beforehand, so that we're fully aware of the worst case scenario. So some examples of objectives. So these are very specific, as mentioned. They're numeric: to increase social media impressions and therefore overall traffic on the company's, say, social media by 25% within the next 3 months. Gain coverage in at least 4 media outlets on local and national levels by the end of this year, and diversify our target audience to include at least one new demographic outside the realm of current audience within the next 6 months. So these are all, as you can see, super specific. These are not just general objectives. These are like exactly what is realistic for this specific brand to achieve. And then back to identifying the target audience. We're figuring out not only the target that's buying or consuming the product or service, but also who do you want to attract? Who are the people out there that you think might want this? And again, market research, where this is kind of what market research does. It identifies our current market, if there is one, and it breaks it down into categories. So like we said, video gamers, or people who buy workout clothing, or people who are buying homes if you're a realtor. So it breaks it down in a very specific way. And so your target audience can go beyond consumers. Stakeholders are not just the people buying your product or service. So they may be internal, they may be external, but who's receiving your communications? Who's receiving the messaging? So internal could be company staff, say it's a larger company and you want to put out messaging for them. And then external could be the general public. It could be target consumers. It could be government entities. And we're going to talk about that on the next slide. So just a breakdown of examples of internal versus external. So it could be employees affected if there, say there's a change to a company's policy internally. In that case, PR also covers that. That's considered internal stakeholder relations. The decision makers of that department, regulatory staff, management for sign-offs on whatever communication you're putting out, unions could be considered external. And then external, we've got interest groups, so specific targets, that the groups of people that may be interested in your product. Media, influencers, obviously, and political entities, as we spoke about, shareholders or stakeholders or stockholders, and the general public. So now I'm going to touch a little on social media and meeting your audience where they are, as we talked about before. So platforms they're using. So I've broken this down into 3 generations and where they are primarily and their secondary social media platforms. So as you can see, Gen X, baby boomers, also known as, 13ers and Gen X, I've put them in the same category. So they're primarily right now on Facebook if they're online. So the ones that are not online are obviously not included here, but Facebook and LinkedIn are kind of the top ones for that generation now. And then secondary, they're on Twitter, not as much, but as we all know, there are definitely older generations on Twitter. And then millennials or Gen Y are my generation, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Secondary platforms are Snapchat, TikTok, and Facebook. TikTok is a very new social media platform that what I consider the younger generations are using. So then the new silent generation, or Gen Z, which is the new one, they're primarily on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. And then secondary, similar to our 13ers or baby boomers primary, is the Facebook and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, is something that everybody is using as a professional profile. So that's for obvious reasons. So a study done showed that more people than we think are social. So 86% of baby boomers are on social media. 13ers or Gen X, 81%, millennials, 88%, and the new generation, of course, the highest, 89%. But it's interesting to see how close baby boomers are to the silent generation. Like they're literally 3% apart. And so everybody's on social media, it seems, right now. So then following kind of identifying our target audience, we move into key messaging. What am I trying to get across? So we usually have 3 main broad key messages, and then we kind of customize those according to the audience we're targeting. So what's the main message of the communication? So something we plan on referring back to, something we plan on using multiple times to get our main message across. So examples, so an example of this is if this is in a negative, obviously, consequence, but if a restaurant has to close due to a staff member testing positive for COVID-19. This is our key messaging that we're going to use in the initial announcement and in public responses. The health and safety of all of our staff, patrons, and the community is a top priority to us. So as you can see, it's pretty general, it's pretty safe, and this is more an example of PR messaging in crisis communications. So then for strategies, this example I'm giving is for social media. So it's not PR strategy, this is specific to social media. 3 strategy examples I'm giving. Consistently post engaging content across social media platforms at least 2 times per week. And we're going to sync up our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook so that everything posts at the same time. And we're going to include captions and hashtags. So a way to do this, and we'll talk more about posting and social media and how it works later, but creating our posts beforehand and our captions beforehand and keeping them ready on software that can do this for us really helps, because then we've got everything kind of backlogged and we can just post at the right times. So another strategy is to increase engagement across our target audience with strategic on-brand messaging, and to collaborate with relevant influencers on Instagram and YouTube to present whoever the brand is to their followers and to increase audience reach. And then some examples of tactics, again, just for social media, to develop eye-catching, prominent content, including text on photo images, galleries, videos, and time lapses. So keeping a nice, diverse Instagram page, and we'll talk about that soon. Compile a content calendar and scheduled posts, as I just mentioned in the last post, to maintain consistency. So content calendars are super, super helpful to organize everything you plan on posting, why you're doing it, what it's going to be about, what's the caption going to say, what are the hashtags going to say, what will the photo look like. And then engage the audience by regularly responding to comments and commenting on posts when appropriate. So keeping up to show that you're checking, you're there, you're liking content, you're commenting back, you're commenting on others' posts too. And then follow relevant accounts that align with your company's branding and show interest in that industry. So that might sometimes mean following its competitors. It might mean, you know, showing things that aren't traditionally necessarily just to gain more consumers, but just to post to show that you're interested in this industry. So this could include media, influencers, potential business, and potential employees. And then lastly, we have how to measure success. So on social media, measuring success, you can use your reach, which is how many unique people have come across your post. Impressions is the number of times a post was viewed. So it's a little bit different from reach. Engagements could be likes, shares, replies, comments, clicks. How many engagements did you receive? How many people interacted with your post? And then click-throughs are for links. So that would more be on Twitter and Facebook, obviously. And then your engagement rate is your reach divided by your click-throughs. So this is getting really kind of mathematical a little bit. Your influencer growth is something you can pay attention to, which Instagram offers as well, or follower growth, sorry. And then how many site visits or page views did you get? So you can see that according to the site you're on, the platform you use, you can view exactly how many visits you got to your page. And then for public relations, we look at the news outlet or podcast. Most of them have a number of subscribers, a number of people that use that outlet. For broadcast, they have a number of viewers that you can research, and there are software that have this. There's one called Cision that you can use to find this out. And they have set times. So if the broadcast goes out in the morning versus the afternoon versus the evening, there are a number of listeners changes accordingly. So they have kind of set numbers for that. Total impressions reached. So we calculate all of this, including social media, and develop a number that says, okay, this is how many total impressions we got. We call that impressions, a little different from the social media impressions, but it's the total impressions we got from this launch or from this campaign or from whatever specific PR strategy we went forward with. So So here's a little bit about social media now. I know this is new to some and to some not so much, but Instagram. So consistent posting is kind of the key on Instagram, that we have the content to post. So when people talk about wanting to get on Instagram, it's great that you want to get on Instagram, but are you going to post content? Are you going to be an information absorber? Are you going to choose to post regularly and kind of set aside that time and dedication to keeping it up to date so that your brand appears like a brand that is up to date and aware of the current society, what this current society needs? So Latergram is a program that I like to use to, again, kind of backlog and have all of my posts compiled, all of my captions compiled for clients so that their posts go out without fail regularly. So graphics. So Canva is great for a starting point for graphics and creating social media posts. They allow you to actually customize according to category exactly what you want to create. So you can literally click Instagram post or Facebook post, and it creates it with even the framing required for those platforms. And then using engaging captions. So really thinking kind of outside the box with your captions, not having no caption and not having a kind of redundant caption that anyone would expect, like saying exactly what's in the photo. And using hashtags. Hashtags are really important on Instagram and Twitter, because if somebody searches your hashtag, they're going to come across your post. So you're using hashtags that are relevant to that specific post, and you can also use hashtags that are more general to the industry. A combination of photo and video content has been shown now to increase more viewership. So the newer generations love video content. They love the real content, and that's the next point there, organic day in the life feel. So the video content tends to be more organic. It has a more real life feel to it, which is what a lot of people love. And then these are some examples of Instagram pages, and we can go to them. I'm just gonna get out of here. Okay, now I hope I can, maybe I can't. Okay, well, we'll do it this way. So this is an example of a bakery. Now, some of you may know that my kind of specialization was in food PR, so most of this stuff will be relevant to food. But so this is a bakery that's done really well. It was actually Bakery B way back when we did that little Q&A thing. So this is that bakery. So they're the #1 bakery across the city. It's called San Remo, and they post real content. They post their product. They post the deliciousness. Looks amazing. And they talk about people. So you can see there's a diversity here. You've got the product. You've got people who work there. You've got relevant things that have to do with specific occasions. So you can see here, Happy Women's Day. It's diversified, and that's what people want to see today. It's that real life, wholesome kind of feel. So going back here, now there's a few more. I might not go through all of them, but let's do this one. So this is a cafe. Again, of course, food related. They specialize in their bagels, but also their beautiful menu. They make their own honey. So you can see the bee logo is kind of everywhere. So their content is very refined. It's a little different from that last bakery we saw. Obviously, the photos are amazing and really well done. but it's still diversified enough, right? So you've got some photos that are not super filtered or super, done up. So you've got color, you've got a variety, and that's what people like to see. And then let me know after if you guys want to see the rest of them. But some key takeaways from what we've kind of, let's go back here. Some key takeaways. So a successful brand meets its consumer where they are. So it's all about the platform they're using, right? So we talked about this. We need to go where they are and use that platform, engage on it. And that obviously requires market research to figure that out. Know your own brand, understand how you want it to be perceived. So I've talked about this a lot with giving advice on branding and people just starting off and deciding to create their own brand is, how does it speak to you? And allow it to be different from its competitors. Don't look at others in the industry and say, how can I make my brand like that? Really make it your own. I think that's a big, big key here. And obviously do industry research to understand the audience for that specific industry and that specific product or service. And then developing a plan is, I think, just integral to starting off. You need to know what you're planning on doing exactly, instead of this general, like, I want to start a business. And have target objectives, detail your strategies and tactics, really know exactly what you're getting into. And then, of course, learn to measure success of your strategies so that you know what works, what you need to change for the next time, and what your audience overall liked or didn't like. So that's it from me. Thank you so much. And I think we're going to turn it over to questions. Natalie, if you want to take over here. This is my contact info, email, website, Instagram page.
Right. Great job. Now, folks, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll go ahead and relay them. And if some of you want to talk in person, we can bring you on too directly. I'll start out with a couple questions. Lila, this is great. And I'm wondering, what is the threshold for a new business or an entrepreneur working with a firm like yours? Because I'm thinking, well, somebody might say they're doing catering in their home and they take stuff out and they sell it at a farmer's market, or they sell it in little places around the neighborhood, something like that. They would need to do a lot more before they were in a position to really have a lot of public relations, particularly to hire an external public relations firm. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the difference between working with a solo entrepreneur or working with a new business and then working with larger companies. I'd kind of be interested on that.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question, Natalie. I think for those smaller companies starting off, they don't necessarily need to hire public relations. And a lot of these things that I've shown are things that a person could do on their own, right? Obviously, the programs and software are not necessary when you start off. When you start off, I think the most important thing is to brand, to understand your brand and to put that out there. And what's obviously great about social media is that it's free. You can get up on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and that's all free. That's all accessible to anyone, which makes it so easy now for brands to obviously market themselves, but it also obviously adds to competition because anyone could be doing that. So again, following that uniqueness and making sure that it aligns with you is what's going to differentiate your brand from any other brand. So I would say in regards to advice to somebody who maybe doesn't have resources to hire an entire PR team is getting online. And again, it's meeting your consumers where they are. So you mentioned a catering business. who are your consumers and are they online? Most likely they are, because as we talked about, everybody's online. So starting with maybe a website, maybe an Instagram page, something that shows your product and service, something that has photos. Taking pictures is like so underrated, and posting them. But it really works for most target audiences. When they see the product, they're like, okay, cool. And then in terms of just getting it across to everybody, for social media, as far as social media goes, hashtags are really effective for this. Location tags are really effective for this too, to get people to go there, right? So you're seeking out the people that are looking for you, basically.
Right. Okay, we have a question coming in. How would you promote a service instead of a product on social media?
So it would obviously depend what the service is. That's huge. For services, I think generally videos work better for social media. They actually demonstrate exactly what you're doing. And obviously your captions are really important for services, because you are talking about what you've done. You're talking about how you do it. My own PR for myself is basically doing that, because I'm providing a service and I have to market that, and there's no product in that, right? So making sure you have really good captions. Sometimes it involves showcasing clients or people you work with, and your interactions. Storytelling is great for this, using and leveraging Facebook and Twitter to convey that, hey, this is what happened, this is what we did. Blog posts are amazing for that, because you can just keep writing, but obviously don't get carried away. But those are kind of tools. In a way, I think it's more interesting when you're trying to promote a service over a product, because you have so many more ways to demonstrate what you do, versus a product where it's not a hard sell, but the product is what it is, right? The service can go further. You can take it wherever you want, and you can promote it in multiple different ways. So I'm happy to talk in more detail about how that works, but if the person wants to talk further about it, we can do that. But generally, I would say, using actual real life examples is what kind of works for service promotion.
Right. That's interesting. So one of the things I'm noticing, though, is that when you talk about building a brand, you have to have a lot of self-definition to do that. And one of this caterer, she does a little catering, but she likes doing some painting too. And she makes a little painting, and then maybe she can sell it at the local senior center. They have a fair once a year. So what is she going to end up branding? It just takes an incredible amount of direction, purpose, knowing where you're going. And some people have trouble with that. I'd say I'm a person who has trouble with that. So
I think we all do a little bit.
Right. How do you make a brand when you just want people to think, you're special and buy whatever I say?
So I think exactly what you said about finding direction. That's just it. You need to have that direction. I think before even deciding to make a brand, you need to understand why you want to create the brand and what your objective is to get out of it. And that's a question I've asked people that sometimes don't know the answer to it, is why are you doing this? Why do you want to sell your product, or why do you want to create a company for this service or this product? And once they can identify that, it might be because they really think there is a market for it, and they really think there will be traction there, and they really think that understanding the industry, that there is there is potential for this business to kick off. That's great. But a lot of people say, well, I do want to do this, but I don't want it to be my only focus, because I love all these other things too. And we're all human. Like we all have these interests, right? So you need to identify what it is you do that stands out to you the most, and whether it's worth it for you to invest the time, whether you're going to invest the time, the energy in pursuing that to that point. So it's a lot of it is just about focus. Am I willing to focus on just doing this? Obviously having other interests is great and you should continue that, but I think choosing exactly, I think choosing exactly what you want to do and why is kind of the key.
Right. And give me some more insight with some of the examples that you've put up about the Instagram businesses that you were helping. Now, you mentioned a very successful bakery in Toronto, and the other one too, with the coffee shop. That was very, very enticing. I wanted to be in a coffee shop. But what I'm wondering about there is, with these businesses, how many employees did they have? Because I think it takes a certain kind of base before you can get to really utilizing a service like yours. And how big were these businesses?
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And so both of those businesses were doing, so the first, the cafe, they were doing PR internally. They were doing their own stuff. A lot of it came out from a really good product. They didn't really need to go out there and do the PR work too much because it had become so well known over the years that everybody knew of it. They had already developed these media connections because media had wanted to come to their venue and kind of try it because they had heard about it on blogs and on other platforms, social media. So that kind of trickled from the quality and the value and all of that being from Italy and being family run and all of that, the quality almost spoke for itself there. And they didn't really need too much PR help externally, even though they might have had the resources for it. So that one was actually not a client. The second one, the cafe, that one is a client. So that one is one that didn't know if they had the resources. And that's something that I always tell them is, don't push yourself. Don't run yourself too thin, obviously. So I like to first create those strategies pro bono, just to help them and give them guidance. So that's what I had been doing when COVID started. Even I was just strategizing and just helping people develop a plan and give them some guidance. And then over time, you have to know for yourself whether you can afford to hire someone externally for that. And obviously you're right, it takes a larger brand sometimes to do that. So I think you have to know whether you can or not, but this is, in a very basic sense, something you can at least start doing yourself, at least at a social media capacity.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, we have an interesting question here from Nawaz Merchant. She wants to know how to keep a social media fresh and not repetitive. Now, I don't know if you know about her path, but she's a phenomenal writer who's published a brilliant novel, and it's a very good question. Yeah, how do you keep it fresh and relevant?
Yeah, so obviously our lives are going to get repetitive, especially during COVID. Things get repetitive. But you know what? Sometimes going back to the beginning, or back to way back when we were promoting a lot. And I know I worked with you, Navas. So going back to when we started promoting at the beginning and coming back to that and saying, obviously for a book, it's a little different because the hype of the launch, it kind of, things move forward until the next launch. But I think keeping it diverse still. So just because, you're struggling to find content might not mean just posting the same day in the life of the same thing. Keeping it diverse, the way we talked about, with like multiple different types of posts, adding video content, creating time lapses, maybe of fun reading tools. So getting creative with that. Time lapse is basically a sped up video that you can create of something happening and from beginning to end, and it's a slow video that you then speed up, and it's cool. So that kind of stuff keeps people engaged because it's unique, it stands out, it's different from what they're scrolling through on their homepage.
Right.
I hope that answered your question, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if you've had any of these cases where somebody's reputation is kind of taken a nosedive and they're in crisis and they need a public relations person to come in and save the day because they're in big trouble. So
Yes.
have you had any of those cases? Are you going to take any of those cases? Or those people go away?
So no, you know what? Those can be a lot of fun. I've never actually had a real client like that, but we've done a lot of case studies on those in the PR program, and working in PR agencies as well. We have had even with the launch of Edul Toronto, which was Edul's first North American launch, and those were things that there's a very set way of dealing with those. The key messaging is what's emphasized there, but you learn the communications, you learn kind of the tools to use, and you also have to foresee that. So in any crisis comms, you have to be able to know that what's possible before it happens. So that's a big part of PR too. From the beginning, is when we talked about that SWOT analysis at the beginning, is knowing our threats. And our threats could be a total PR blow, something terrible happens, right? So keeping aware of as much as you can possibly think up that could go wrong helps a lot, just to be prepared for it. But yeah, things always happen, and every company in the PR program, we learned that every company at some point, something is going to go wrong in some capacity, right? Whether it's small or large, something could go wrong. So knowing how to communicate, knowing how to use really effective messaging, and cutting things where they need to be cut helps.
So you're looking forward to some of the challenges, I see. Okay.
Yes, it's fun in a lot of ways.
It could be, it could be.
It could.
Have you developed, this is from Mr. Jahangir Darukanawala, have you developed a checkoff list for your clients so that they could review the main issues while they're working with you, and that they're kind of oriented there?
Yeah, so what I do when I start off with a new client is I create a slide deck that outlines everything we're going to do. So basically that PR plan that I showed at the beginning that had the list of different things we're doing, it was basically like that, obviously more detailed, but that SWOT analysis that you saw was pulled from the main presentation. And I showed that presentation to clients from the get-go now. I used to just create a plain standard document plan, which Navaz, I'm sure you remember, our PR plan, but now I create a full slide deck that outlines everything we're going to go through, everything we're hoping to accomplish, and the timeline of that. Sometimes I use a social media calendar because that can really help on what we're going to be posting. So check off list, but in a little more detail, I guess. It's a slide deck that just goes through everything. And I send that over to the client to say, this is our strategy. This is our PR and social media strategy. If you could review it, let me know what you'd like to change. If there are any gaps that you know that I don't know that you need to fill in, we go through it, and we go through it together.
That's interesting. So are you also able to work with a client who wants you to do the work and wants to sort of be independent, just says, take care of my PR, I'm busy. Can you work with a client like that?
So I've had encounters like that before. I've had clients like that before. And it becomes tricky because PR works closely with your brand, right? So unless I am constantly in the loop of what's going on with your brand, and if I'm really understanding your product and you've helped me to understand it from the get-go, then sure, that could work. But there needs to still be some communication back and forth, because if we're not aligned, and if I'm representing the brand, then you want to communicate with me. You want to have a strong relationship with me to make sure that we're both on the same page. Because the worst thing anyone wants is obviously a blunder or something to go terribly wrong, or a policy to be breached without my knowing, right? So I like to always go back to the client and say, this is what I'm planning on doing this week. This is what I'm planning on posting. You don't want something to be posted or shared that the client did not want. So I like to keep a constant open dialogue with my clients.
Right. Okay. We have an interesting question from Bayros Club Wallet coming in. A medium-sized business is just launching, family-owned. How much of their business should they of their budget should they allocate to social media plans and outreach? Okay, so like what percentage? What would you think?
This is tough because although it says medium-sized, this will be so subjective to the business, to exactly what they do. And it will depend on their budget. It always will depend on their budget, right? So in terms of a percentage, if it's medium-sized, I know this is rough, but 15%, 10 to 15% could be allocated. If it's just social media and not PR, it'll probably be less than 15%. It'll probably be about half of that, or less than half of that, maybe even 5%. If it's medium size and your only focus is social media, not the full media relations side, and the full public relations side. So I would say like 5 to 7% for social media.
Interesting. Okay. One of the kind of questions I have again is, the landscape is changing so much in terms of the tools we use on the internet. And even with social media, I'm seeing phenomenal changes all the time. So when you get into applications that want to employ artificial intelligence, we're going to have virtual reality soon. Are you going to pick up on those things too? I think they're going to be intriguing, and they're going to be intriguing for a business like yours, and will present challenges too, because you have to stay at the forefront of that. And how are you going to do that when you have to keep up with your clients and your own work at the same time? So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because the change is phenomenal.
Yeah, and a lot of those changes have already taken place. We're all already doing less work than PR people were doing 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah, you're right. AI is a new huge thing. There are aspects that we now leverage having more than the ones that are accessible for in artificial intelligence. So a big example is relationship building. And that's with media directly. That's a very personal level. So with media relations, we try to get to know the person, the journalist or the writer, on a kind of personal level. Or an example is saying, I read your article on this. I thought this was really interesting. It spoke to me. Building that relation that artificial intelligence can't really leverage, because that's a very emotional level of relationship. That's something I don't foresee ever going away for humans. So that's exactly what we do with media relations. We do talk a lot to media. We build relationships, and not just media. We build relationships with all stakeholders on a very personal level. So that side of PR, I think, is the side that will not disappear, and that's a really big part of it. The social media side, I think, as people become more educated on social media platforms, and just with the newer generations coming in, it's already becoming that way, right? More and more people are learning how to use these platforms and have their own personal accounts on them. So that side I could see potentially as a threat to PR business. But that's one small aspect of PR, right? The social media side. And another thing that obviously artificial intelligence helps with, but doesn't fully do for you, is graphic content, right? You're using tools, but it's not going to go posting for you. It's not going to go creating exactly what you thought of in your head. So there is a level that you still need somebody or your own expertise to post, I guess.
Okay. We have another question. What tools do you suggest for editing video or creating time-lapse videos? What about Canva animations? They're quick, but they're not flexible. So some of the video tools, what do you find is
So
good?
I use one called Splice. It's a video editing tool. It lets you edit crop videos. It lets you add dialogue, like lets you add text to videos. You can create really cool graphics on it, and you can do it all from your phone. And then you can add music or sound to it, and you can obviously adjust the speed. There's a bunch of different speeds you can choose from. So Splice is great. And then you can post directly to your social media platform from Splice, which is really cool. So that's one that I like to use. That's kind of my main one. Since I have a MacBook, it's very friendly with photo editing and stuff. So I sometimes use the features on Mac that you can do a little bit of editing, but not a great deal of it. I used to use Photoshop and all the Adobe Creative Suite, Illustrator, InDesign, stuff like that. Not so much now. It's something I learned in school and just didn't pursue enough. So my main ones right now for video are definitely Splice, and then for graphics and photos, it's Canva mostly.
Right. And Canva is open source, right? It's free
Yep.
or yeah.
So it's got premium membership, and you can do it for free. So you can kind of choose what you want, but obviously there's going to be more options and more cool content with the premium membership. But yeah, anybody can use Canva. It's literally canva.com. Anyone can create anything on Canva, and it gives you the coolest, a lot of very modern templates that you can look through and customize, which is really great about it. You can customize color, font, everything. Really nice text on photo content.
That's nice. Okay.
Natalie,
Well, sure.
if I could just jump in for a second, Natalie.
Sure.
Yeah, we are honored to have Sam Balsara join us. As you know, Sam runs Madison World, which is a leading advertising and marketing company. And yesterday, if you can unmute Sam, I would love to hear some comments from Sam about how he's using social media at Madison World. You know.
That's it. You're on the spot, Sam.
Hi, Lila. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can. Nice to meet you.
Oh, great. Wonderful. So first, please accept my congratulations on starting your entrepreneurial journey so early.
Thank
I'm
you so
sure,
much.
you will do extremely well. So how many clients do you have now?
I currently have 4 clients, 4 main clients.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And do you employ people?
I've been kind of in the middle. I've been in the middle right now. I've received I've received applications, but I haven't fully decided when to start employing people. I haven't right now.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm sure you'll do very well. I think maybe the first few years of your life, I think you should focus on building your own reputation as a PR and social agency, rather than focus on more business. I mean, that is what I did at Madison 33 years ago. And that is how I have survived. I've noticed a lot of younger businesses that are born today focus on very quick growth. But I think we should remember that we are in the service business, and reputation is more important for a PR and social agency than it is for a client that manufactures products, because the only thing that you will have for you is reputation. So don't be in a hurry to sort of expand and let down your existing clients. So you should, really build a very strong bond with your existing clients, help them grow. And that is how I think you will grow. And I
Yes,
do hope that
thank you so
everybody
much.
who's listening in will benefit and take advantage of the importance of social media that is available to build either your personal reputation or your business reputation. Thank you, Edul, for asking
Yeah,
me
I
to
hope so
speak.
too.
No,
Thank
our
you so
pleasure.
much, Sam. Thank you for the advice. That was really helpful.
Yeah, that's good to know. Gives you some direction,
Yeah, it does.
keep you on your toes, right? So that's very good. Um, do we have other questions, or would people like to enter into the conversation? Anybody else? I think I've gone through most of my questions that I had, and your questions as well. Uh, Anybody else? Okay. Well, we'll do some thinking and come up with some, and I'm sure we'll be in touch, some of us, with you. And really looking forward to seeing your new website and all of that. So, uh, oh,
Yeah, and I
we
can,
had another question coming in. How do you market yourself? Okay, so
yeah, great.
that's a good one.
Great question. Yeah, similar to the way I market clients using social media and stuff like that. I don't use media relations right now for myself. Um, and that could partly be because a lot of my marketing for myself is done on the job when I'm doing media relations for clients, right? My name is getting out there every time I connect with a media member. So mostly social media. I will admit that my marketing for myself doesn't seem to be as strong as the marketing I'm doing for my clients. And it could improve, but they say we're the worst at marketing ourselves. But I think that's something I need to work on for sure. But mostly I use social media and obviously my website, which anybody can go check out. I also create a slide deck of just my personal brand, what it does, services, kind of goes through everything it offers. And I use that to market myself as well as kind of a pitch to new clients. And a lot of it is not during COVID, obviously, but the in-person, walking into a restaurant and sitting down. And actually just last week, we finally opened up into the red zone here in Oakville. And I went to a restaurant and I brought up social media. I said, what's your strategy right now? And she said, actually, we have someone, but we could really use some help. And I said, well, here's my website, here's my card. So a lot of it is just on the spot kind of. There's, I guess, three main ways for marketing myself for the industry is mostly the media relations. Marketing myself for new clients is obviously in person and social media and the website. So those are kind of my main ones.
Okay, so I think we've answered that. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you for a great presentation. We really enjoyed it, and we learned a lot. So thank you very much on behalf of the WZCC New York chapter. Another brilliant session under our belt. And folks, I'd like you to look forward to our next meetings, which will be announced through email and so forth. And always look at our chapter as as a place where you can get involved and have entry into all of the good work WZCC is doing. We have phenomenal resources and global presence across the entire world. So, and so our local chapter is nicely integrated with this worldwide effort of WZCC. So think about that. Think about what you'd like to do as a WZCC chapter member or global member, however it works for you, there are so many opportunities. So I want to thank everybody for coming today.
Natalie,
And,
I think there's another question in the chat.
okay.
It says,
Yeah.
do you send your
Yeah.
information on the services you offer to other companies and clients to actively expand? Yes, that's the slide deck I mentioned. That's exactly, yeah. So I send it out to clients that are not, to companies that are not currently clients, as kind of a pitch for myself of this is what I can offer you.
That would be through email or through print
Through
sending?
email. I create like it's like a slideshow, a slide deck of everything I offer over email.
Okay, so
It's a
that's like a
PDF.
general purpose, right? Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Natalie, also, if someone wants to stay behind and talk in more detail with Lila, I'm sure she can hang around,
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
definitely.
If anybody would like to do that. Okay. But otherwise, thank you very much on behalf of the New York chapter.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thanks for hosting this, and thank you to WZCC for this.
And thank you to, yeah.
I think it's muted.